Russia, famously known for its vodka and its culture of extreme intoxication. But just as vodka is central to the lives of many Russians, it is also central to understanding Russian history and politics.
That's right. In the book Vodka Politics, Alcohol, Autocracy, and the Secret History of the Russian State, author Mark Lawrence Schrad explores original documents and archival evidence to analyze how vodka is hardwired into the Russian political system. And Mark joins us now live on set. You are also an assistant professor of political science at Villanova. We are so happy to have you here. I stumbled across this book a couple weeks ago. It's absolutely fascinating, but you preface it by saying this is not about an ugly stereotype. This is not, and that's almost led to why people don't dive into how much of an issue this has been for decades. From czars to Medvedev, people have tried to tackle this problem and come up short. What's going on here?
Right, and thank you for having me.
This
is a fascinating topic and obviously something that's observed a lot of my time since I was a student back in Russia in the 1990s when the economy was in the tank and just living there for a long time. You're just like, okay, well, there's something about this stereotype, and we've all heard this stereotype, but then you're sort of living it. You're like, okay, there's a lot of alcohol going on right now, a lot of vodka, and so I kind of wanted to hammer at why, rather than just sort of avoiding the unpleasantness, diving into it, and a lot of the times it's just prefaced as some sort of cultural stereotype. Oh, Russians just love it, and they don't, right? I mean, it's not like they're just like sipping a vodka and then going, oh, what a great aroma. No, they're having a hard time choking it down just like anybody else. But actually, I think it has to be more of a legacy of political and economic decisions that are at the heart of autocratic statecraft, kind of putting the interests, the financial interests of the autocratic state ahead of the well-being of their own people for generations upon generations, through the czars, through the Soviets, and unfortunately straight on through the present day.
Explain that a bit more. So I mean, the level of consumption is huge, like 15 to 16 liters per person per year, I think is what I read. So people are consuming an incredible quantity of hard alcohol. In another country, that might be seen as kind of a public health issue or concern. There it's not.
It was. So during a period of time between, Putin's first two terms, and then there was that interregnum where Dmitry Medvedev swapped positions for 4 years.
Briefly, yes.
Well, one of his big initiatives was an anti-alcohol campaign because he acknowledged that this is horrible. This is decimating our society. It's decimating our ability to field troops. It's decimating our tax base, and all those sorts of things. So they tried to clamp down beginning about 2009 on alcohol consumption, using what I would say are fairly progressive policies, informed by public decision or by public health professionals around the globe, and very incremental approaches, very well thought out. Little did he know, though, perhaps, that on the other side was that his president, Vladimir Putin, had actually been buying up and taking control of, personally, a very large percent of the Russian vodka market. And so a lot of those public health initiatives ended up focusing in on putting higher taxes not on vodka, but on beer, which is lower alcohol, probably better than quaffing vodka.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's just completely upside down. So even the public health initiatives were pushing more vodka on people, which is just bizarro land. It's topsy-turvy.
But that almost kind of fits with what you talk about in the book, and that's throughout its history, kind of due to the way this was set up with grain production and with the advent of the tavern, vodka was used as a tool of the state. It was a big financial boon. Can you explain how that works? I mean, so much so that Tolstoy was a teetotaler, which I didn't know, and the Bolsheviks were vehemently anti-booze because it was such a weapon of the state.
Right, and this is something actually is not just, it started, my interest started in Russia, but kind of expanded out globally in subsequent research, but it's fascinating how many people throughout history, including American history, are noteworthy prohibitionists.
Yes.
So Tolstoy, Lenin, in the United States, Frederick Douglass, I would say, Abraham Lincoln. You could say Thomas Jefferson was America's first prohibitionist. So it's fascinating because ultimately the key to understanding sort of that anti-alcoholism, and you definitely saw it in the autocratic regimes in Russia, was that this is how and it didn't take like a rabid Marxist to point this out. This is how the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. And so it was
'Cause
very
you couldn't
easy.
trade for it, right? You had to pay for vodka in hard currency.
Right. You had to, and it was strictly forbidden to make your own outside. This was part of the Tsar's monopoly on the tavern trade. And so the tavern keepers were known as Selavalniki, which means the kissers. They kissed a cross to vow that they would not dilute, that they would not interrupt the revenues of the state that were going to the Tsar. And so they were sort of the main interference points, or point of interface, I should say, between sort of Russian society and the Russian government. And that's, essentially how you paid money into this whole system. So.
You wrote this book before Russia's first incursion into Ukraine, and some years have passed since then, and here we are in the middle of this war. And I'm curious, through the prism through which you've written this book, sort of how you're looking at this current conflict and the difficulty that we've seen reported that Russia has kind of fielding its army to continue to fight this war. Through this lens, what can we glean or what can we learn just about the kind of state of the conflict itself and the way that they're able to recruit people to fight in it?
Right, and it's been interesting to kind of sort of watch it through that particular lens. In the early years of the conflict, the Donbass War in particular, you had the Euromaidan revolution in Kyiv, and then obviously the annexation of Crimea and the sort of this low-scale war in the Donbass region. It was a sort of a study in contrast, because the Ukrainian side, which also has afflictions with alcohol and sort of the vodka as part of that historical trajectory, but also has a lot more sort of European cultural influences, historical influences from the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the areas around Lviv and so on. The protests that were going on there were very orderly. In fact, they had areas that were self-policing in terms of making sure that we have sobriety. We don't want anything going wrong here. By contrast, the sort of inauguration of these rebels republics in the Donbass region by these pro-Russian separatists were just drunken bacchanals, and you had reporters on the scene reporting how everybody's drunk, everybody's falling apart on these sorts of things, and so it was kind of an interesting contrast. It's like, all right, we've got it very clearly here that these are not the same protests, and they're bringing different sort of historical baggage in those cases.
But at some point, I mean, it impacts the functioning of the state, because when you look at a military, it's got to impact readiness. And when you talk about historically, even the function of the Soviet state, you write about these insane dinner parties that Stalin used to have, in which he used to insist his ministers, who had work to do, would stay very late into the night. They would fake drunkenness early so they could try to go home and salvage the rest of their day. Talk about the work of this as almost a statecraft and an internal monitoring system, because what was the goal? Getting people drunk enough that they would spill their secrets, or they would tell them if they were a spy?
Yeah, there was certainly an element to that, and I remember.
David, don't do this to me. I'm not telling you my secrets if we go
just
drinking.
Water in that
I don't know.
Yeah, no, like the opening scenes of the movie Death of Stalin. I don't know if you've seen it.
That's kind of what I was thinking as I was reading the book. Yeah.
When I saw that movie, I was like, did they read like the first chapters of this book? Because it was, but literally, I talk about it in the book. It was like like a frat party with the devil. I mean, he's forcing everybody to drink with the intention of maybe divulging some secrets if they were secretly plotting to overthrow, sort of loose lips sink ships kind of thing. So there was kind of this idea of keeping one's potential opponents off base, whether that's or off base a little bit, whether that's in the Kremlin, but also if you want to project that out in terms of sort of state-society relations, there's something to be said about keeping the people sort of drunk and off base and unable to sort of mount a challenge to your own authority in that way. So it works a little bit both ways.
In the last few minutes we have here, let me just take advantage of you being a scholar of Russian politics and just to ask you how you're thinking about or viewing Vladimir Putin at this moment in time. I think there are a lot of folks who see him as maybe getting closer to having his back up against the wall, and I'm curious, looking at that kind of in the complement of history, how you're thinking about him in this moment.
Yeah, it's it's weird. I can't claim to have a direct line to Vladimir Putin, and I'm very suspicious of anybody who does claim to have that. But one of the things I constantly notice, especially in sort of Western media coverage, is this notion of I'm calling it it's like a village literature on sort of the beginning of the end of Putin.
Interesting.
And I wrote a piece, I think, for Foreign Policy a number of years ago, kind of tracing these, and I was finding beginning of the end of Putin. stories going back to the Kursk disaster in 2002. So, you can go all the way back. Oh, COVID, this is the beginning
Reports
of the
of
end.
my death have been greatly exaggerated.
Exactly.
Second time we've used that this hour.
Exactly.
But yeah.
But I think my position was always like, well, as a betting person, you can always say, well, this is the beginning of the end. This is the beginning of the end. Well, every time you're going to be wrong, except for once. So it's better to be and take the opposite approach and say, this is probably not the end of Putin. And that way you can only be wrong once. Which is the one way to look at it there.
But as you look at the drivers that have fomented change in the past, what finally gets it to that breaking point? There's so little opposition left in that country. Even if Putin falls, what replaces him, and could that be worse?
Right, and that's the key, I think, to a lot of this, is that I think we take, especially in the West, we kind of project our notions of popular sovereignty. The sovereignty lies with the people, and then we have to keep the people placated, at least, some degree of public approval, maybe not, expressed through, direct democratic initiatives or whatnot. But there still is that sense that, well, if we can't push the Russian people too far or else they're going to rebel. I think we've passed that point where that sovereignty is linked to the will of the Russian people. So nowadays you're seeing these lines of cars, lining up, queuing up for gas, and now the attacks on other ones. And everybody's just saying, well, where's the Russian people's breaking point? I don't think the Russian people are going to break anytime soon.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. The book is Vodka Politics. Mark Lawrence Schrad, thank you so much for driving in. We appreciate it.